everybody, it's Friday afternoon. How on it? We just hit 5 o'clock. So welcome back to our cooking show. Tonight we're going to pay homage to our Hawaiian heritage and our Hawaiian place of learning. So we're going to cook beet poke, which is traditional, you know, here locally as ahi, but we're going to change it into a beet poke. And then we're making olena rice and a teriyaki tofu. So welcome to our group and let's get cooking. So first off, we're going to start with the beet poke. So start with your beet, and our recipe is a half. So you're going to use just the one beet. Make sure you rinse all your vegetables for any of this stuff, and I'll go ahead and rinse all my veggies now. So we've got a scallion, we have cilantro. So just make sure you're rinsing all these. They haven't been washed. You don't have to worry about washing your ginger. Okay. All right. So beets, we're going to cut that little bit of an end off, and then we're going to slice this into cubes. So I always have kind of like trivia. What is, you know, giving you some trivial options. So how many colors of beets are available? And we're going to cut this in about 1/2 inch cubes. So how many colors of beets do we have on the market? So that's my first trivial question. As you're thinking about that, we're still cutting up our beets. They do, careful because they will stain. It's a water-soluble pigment called betalain, and that's what makes that nice pink color. There are actually 4. And so if anybody picked that 3, can you name the 3? We didn't have to peel it. Good. There's one more variety out there, and I don't know if anybody's ever used them, but it's one more color of an option. We can get them here locally. I've seen them on islands, so we do have that option. I don't know if that helps anybody with guesses. If you're making a beet, like a beet salad, I made a fresh beet salad once, and it called for the yellow and the reds. And in order to make it so that your colors don't combine and everything, the red is so brilliant and so strong that it will overpower all your other colors. So if you want to boil them separately, that will be your ideal way of making it so that you don't have everything is pink. So keep them separate until you absolutely have to mix them, and then you can mix them up and have your colors stay separate. So that last color is a candy cane. So if you've ever seen candy cane beets, they actually look like peppermint candies with the swirled pink and white, or red and white, kind of pinkish. So that is the 4th type of beet. And those are really nice on a salad. They're really pretty because they're literally like a cinnamon roll or a snail. You know, you think of the snail curled up. That is what those candy cane beets are like. So we're going to boil these and make them about fork tender. And again, your chop size is really what you want to bite into. So kind of try and get consistent sizes so they all cook about the same. And then you should be ready to go. Now, there's a difference between beets like this and sugar beets. Sugar beets are used to make sugar. So they're about 20% sugar compared to this type of beet is about 8% sugar. So you can see there's a difference. I'm going to put them in the pan, and we're going to add a 1/2 cup of water. And then you also have some salt that you're going to add there as well. Now, the fun thing with this color, yes, it's water soluble. And so what that means is that if you eat a lot of beets, like if you were consuming a lot of beets, and it'll eventually come off your hands, but if you ate a lot of beets and it's water soluble, guess where you're going to see it later? I don't know if anybody will get that. So 1/2 cup of water. Where are we going to see that color again? Wait, I think I actually need more water. Your recipe called for a half a cup, but if you need to add a little bit more to cover get a little bit more coverage on the beets. Any idea where you're going to see that color again? Kind of a fun fact. It will look that way it will actually color your urine a little bit more pinkish, and it actually can be in your fecal material as well. So you'll have that pinkish, that's if you ate a decent amount, but don't be alarmed after you eat your beet poke if you have a little bit of pinkish colored urine. All right, so we also are going to use the cilantro. So while those are cooking, we're going to have a marinade, and that one is actually ready for you in the where it says poke. So you've got your chili flakes and your sesame oil, rice vinegar, your sugar is also in here, and your soy sauce. So we're going to have that on the side, and I'm actually going to put that in a bowl so that we can mix that up really good. So we'll do that. So I'll put that aside because we're going to mix our beets in there. Okay. But I also want to get my cilantro cut up and my green onions ready. So that's going to be for later. Those are basically your garnish. And we're going to boil our beets till they're about fork tender. So 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes. So set your timer for about 10 minutes and let those boil. While those are cooking, we'll get our green onion chopped up, and I'll take off I think I'm going to make this easier. If you cut your scallion in half, then you'll have a chance to not have to cut so long. If you want to do a straight cut, feel free, but if you want to do a little bit of a teardrop, just do an angled on your scallion, and you'll have a little bit of a different shape. I always like to have fun shapes, so this gives you kind of that teardrop versus a straight cut. Okay, so get those cut. Then we'll cut our cilantro. The other thing too, if you want to keep your end and plant it, you can try and add it to your garden, and you'll grow some more green onions. All right. So another trivial beet question. Any idea? So beets, you saw ours. It's probably, it says 1.5 on your recipe. It talks about 1.25 pounds or 2 large beets. So yes, there are world records out there for beets, and for, I always like to look up what's the world's largest beet. Any idea if an average one weighs 3/4 pound, how big was the biggest one ever recorded? Any guesses is always good. How many pounds was the world's largest beet? And I'm just going to cut up my cilantro. And I'll use as much, some of the stems as well. 50? Wow, that's really close. The largest one was 52 pounds, 14 ounces. So pretty big size beet. Then they also, because it's technically it could be like it's considered a root. How long could we have a beet root? How long could we get that beet root? Very close, 28. You guys are good guessers. I check my, still pretty firm. Again, it's kind of like checking potatoes. You want to check for that firmness, and it's going to give you a little bit of a give. You want to get your, you can see them, probably pull one on a spoon, and Kelly, if you want to zoom in, you can kind of get that feel of, we're still pretty firm. So we're going to let those go. I think we have about 5 minutes left on our timer. 8, 7. Okay. So we're going to count that down. So we've got that going. We're going to do a lime. So you're going to have, you probably won't use much more than a half a lime, but again, it's all to taste. So if you want to add the extra, feel free. So we're going to have our lime juice or our lime ready to go. And I'll use the whole half of a lime for this. And sesame seeds. So you can toast your sesame seeds. So you've got a tablespoon of sesame seeds. If you have a fry pan, saute pan, you know, you can put them in there. You can put them in a toaster oven. You can also, so we're going to do this right over the stovetop. And it doesn't take long. I caution you, if you go, you know, full bore on getting your stovetop hot, it won't take long. They're going to go pretty quick. This is not going to, we're going to have to hold on to that. So if you go it real hot, it goes pretty quickly. So keep them kind of moving, and you're looking for that little bit of brownness. So here's what you should see on your finished, kind of get that brown versus the light tan. So again, it's literally not that long to get them, and you'll smell them. Kind of gives that fragrance too. So we'll watch for the, yeah, see, they're already starting to brown a bit. And I actually have it up above my, and I have a flame. So if you're doing it on electric, that's fine too. And just keep them moving and watch for color changes and smell. If you go too far, you'll know it, because they'll be like dark brown and they'll smell kind of that burnt fragrance. So they should taste like or smell like a toasted sesame. So even your pan is still hot. So don't forget to take them off early enough that you give your pan a chance to cool down while they're not overcooking as well. So you can do that. Okay. So I'm going to set these aside because that's actually our garnish for the top. And actually I could put it into a, I'll put it into a bowl, so they're not overcooking. There we go. So there's your toasted sesame seeds. That on the counter. All right. Now we're going to do, we've got the marinade ready and we've got our beets cooking. So we're going to do the ginger, and we need about 3/4 of a teaspoon of ginger. So when you are starting with ginger, this is, you probably have a chunk. So peel it with a spoon. Makes it real easy to come off. If you have a zester at home, you can use a zester, or you can use the smallest cheese grater on your cheese. If you have one of the block graters, you could use the smallest section of that. If not, totally fine. Just get a good chef's knife or a good knife that you're comfortable with, and then you can mince it. So we'll do both a minced version, and then I'll do a zested version on a zester. So again, just you're going to get it as small as you can. It's like doing garlic. So just give yourself little small chops. It's going to be, as you know, your taste and size that you're going to bite into. So give yourself a little bit of a mince. So that will be your minced version, and then I'll show you what zested version looks like. All right, so my zester, I can go on the edge of the zester. This one kind of gives you a little bit of stringiness on the top, like that's what is left over. You have to just be careful not to zest your knuckles, because that won't make for added flavor. And that's what it looks like zested. So you can do that. And I'll just tap that out. Okay. So we've got our beets are still cooking. They're probably getting to the point of close to being done. And then I'll strain them off out of the water. Put that in the sink. So we've got our minced ginger ready to go. And I will check my beets texture. And look how pretty they are. They look like little ahi cubes. right? Still pretty firm. And I think our time is probably 3-4 minutes. So we still got a little bit more time. So again, it's up to you on your texture. If you start running low on water, you can add more water because that half cup, that's why I added more to start with. It just seemed a little bit on the low side. So those are still cooking. We've got our marinade ready and our extras are here. So we can set this kind of aside for now. And then we'll jump into our next recipe of the Olena rice. But beets, just to go back to our beets. So beets are really good source of fiber, good source of folate, low calorie. I mean, if we think about all the things that are high in calorie, these are not high calorie. So they're pretty low calorie. Vitamin C. And you could probably eat them on average 2 to 3 times a week. If you eat them more than that, they have oxalic acid. So that kind of becomes an irritant. So that might be something to consider. So 3 to 4 times a week is good for beets and nice option to use for cooking. You can eat them raw, you can eat them cooked. Okay. So I think I will put this cutting board on the backside and we'll get our onion. So we have Olena rice is our next dish. So you have a container that looks like this. This has turmeric in it and it has the chicken broth. Now, what we realized is that we gave you a full amount of the turmeric. You actually only want to do half of that. So because there's chicken broth in here already, you may need to add a little bit of salt, but otherwise just use half. If you like turmeric, you can use the whole thing. It just, we realized it was darker than what it was potentially supposed to be. So use your half of the container. So instead of a full tablespoon, it would be like a teaspoon and a half. So make sure you can adjust that. Oh, and I have like no water left in my pot. Let's see, my fork. So just caution, you don't want to overboil them. Say they get to the point where they're no more water. Add a little bit of water and we can keep on. Whew, my pan's getting hot too. Okay. So let's get our onion ready to go for the rice. So you have a quarter onion and a clove of garlic. Now the garlic is a full clove. You are welcome to use the whole clove or you can cut it to a half, which is what the half recipe would be. So feel free to go either way and I can get it out of my plastic. We'll be in better shape. All right. So peel your, like probably the 2 layers. If you get a spot on your onion, this one has a little bit of a brown area, but this looks pretty good. So I think what I'll do is I'll cut through it and take that out and use the rest of this side. But you can cut your edge off. And I think I'll just went down a few lines. I don't want to cut it all out. There we go. You just cut off if there's a bad spot. Now, for anybody that is with us from prior classes, one of the ways that you can leave it whole is leave the end on and then do some slices. Oops, I think I hear my alarm for my beets, but I'll go a little bit longer since I had to pull them off and add more water. So you can do the cutting along the line of your onion, hold it together, and then stack it, and then we can just chop. Again, you make the decision on how big you want your onions. Keep your fingers out of the way, use your knuckles as a guide. If it needs to sit on the side for safety, that's fine too. Okay. And now our onion is fully chopped. We're going to do the same with our garlic, and I'm going to use the whole garlic because I think garlic is a great thing for us. So we'll just do a little bit of mince. You can smash your garlic clove if you want, but we'll get as close to this as a mince. Get my fingers out of the way. Okay, oops. Again, make it as small as you want. If you have a garlic masher, that makes it even more time friendly for you. Then we'll leave that and have that ready. So that's for our olena rice. And I think I'll check my beets. Still, they're still firm. Again, it's texture is your kind of call. You're trying to get it close to a soft enough texture that you're not having to crunch into it, but yet at the same time, it's not falling apart. And luckily these don't break down as easily as like a potato would. A little bit more firm. So we'll see in another, let's give them another like 3 minutes. 3 minutes and we'll try that. Okay, so coming back to our olena rice, we are going to take the butter. You have a tablespoon of butter and we're going to melt that in a saucepan. So you have a tablespoon of butter. Peel that out. Remember, this is a half recipe. I do have a fun fact to share with you about the beets. So because beets are so colorful, right? And the red beets are so amazing. There was a Greek, according to Greek mythology, there was one of the Greek goddesses that they assume that she was really, they attributed her romantic power to beet. Whoop. Oh, my pot. Yep, sorry. We're going to use the pot. Thanks, Kelly. So she used beets for her romantic kind of flair. So any idea which Greek goddess of mythology would have been kind of that romantic? Think of all the romantic innuendos that we have with Greek mythology. Can you think of who that was? All right, so we have our, sorry, we're gonna move this back to that burner, turn it on. Whoop. Any idea? I'll give you guys a chance to think about that one. Who is your Greek goddess of, who's the Greek goddess of love? I think that's the ticket. So melt your butter. Get this melted. Aphrodite. You got it. So she actually, they figure all the colors that were involved in some of her more erotic prints were all around that beet color. So she was famous for that. There is a famous scientist that was very anti-beet. He hated beets. And that was Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein. He hated beets. And what do I have in here with my butter? Something jumped in there. Oh, part of the paper. We don't need to eat the paper. Okay, I saw black. That didn't make sense. So add your onion. I think it'll be easier to do this. Add your onion and your garlic. And again, we don't want it to burn. So you don't want to go too hot, but we want to get it soft, kind of saute it. Okay. Get all of our good garlic. And, oh, I got a scallion I'm going to chop up. So we're going to use, did I hear my timer for my beets? Okay. So we're going to saute this just a little bit until it's soft. It usually takes 2 to 3 minutes. In the meantime, we'll check my beets. They're getting there, but there's still, let's see. I'm going to put it on the table so you can, they're still pretty firm. We were like, put a fork on it. I can't, I'm putting pretty good weight on there. It's not going to smash like a carrot. Oops, gonna fly. So they're still pretty firm. And I'll cook them for another 2. My water is getting low again. 2 minutes. Let's give it a shot. So don't hesitate to add more water in the start. All right, so we've got my garlic and onions, and of course you should start smelling, your kitchen should start smelling absolutely wonderful. And then you are going to add your, once these get soft, and we're looking kind of for that translucent, they still a little bit longer. Again, it's like that 2 to 3 minutes, roughly. We're going to get translucent. We're going to add the rice, and we're going to add that turmeric to add in there. So I'm going to use, here's a question. How many teaspoons in a tablespoon? Any idea how many teaspoons in a tablespoon? Because we do have chicken broth in here. We're going to give it a little bit more, but how many teaspoons in a tablespoon? Because we want to go half. Okay. The middle number is right. 3. So you're going to go for 3. So we're going to add the rice, all of your rice. And let's go, if you want to measure it out, you could do about 2 teaspoons, because there is about 3/4 of a teaspoon of the chicken broth. So I'm going to just do it this way. Put it into your bag. If you saw on top, you'll see the darkness of the turmeric. On top of that was the chicken broth. So I'll put that aside. Then basically we're going to keep, we've got the garlic, onion, I'm pretty much done. I don't want to turn brown, and it's getting closer to brown. So I'm going to turn it down. Ideally, we want this to simmer. So we're going to put the rice in, and reason we're putting, I hear my beeper again for my beets. The reason we're doing it with the butter and the onions is to kind of start that starch breakdown. We're kind of toasting that basmati rice. And then I'll get into some, I got to get into some fun facts about turmeric, because we actually have some pretty good benefits from it. All right, so we kind of toasted that a little bit. And then I need to add my thyme. And I do need to add broth. So I'm going to add, it calls for 1.5 cups. So we need to go 3/4. And I've got thyme here. So we want to strip the thyme. I'm going to turn this off so I don't overcook it. Check my beets. Much better. Softer. Yeah. That's what we're going for. This is off. Okay. Those are done. So I'm going to grab those off. I'm going to strain them. In the meantime, I did turn off my rice because I don't want it to burn, but it is kind of toasting. So we're going to drain the beets. You can see that nice red color. Ooh. Can't get all my beets out of there. But you can see how they've turned from a real dark red. I don't know if you can pick that up. They're a nice, we've got some tinges of dark and some light areas. So more pigment has come out. That is going to go into your marinade. So I want to pour that into, I'll rescue the rest of those beets in a second. We're going to put the rest of the hot beets, we're going to put them in with your marinade. So mix that up a little bit. Pour it into your hot marinade. Out of the way. Woo, hot. Get this. Oops, sorry, that's like one of those bad sounds. And then we'll mix this up a little bit. So they're going to marinate until they cool. Oops. Run away. So we'll get that marinade going, and then you can let that sit and cool off. Ideally, if you can let it cool until it's at room temperature minimum, and then if you want to put it in the refrigerator to cool even longer, that will help your, when you add your onions and your cilantro, not to wilt too bad. So we've got it mixed up pretty well. We'll let those marinate. So there's the beginning of that beet poke. Okay, so we're going to let this cool. I'm actually going to put it in the fridge. hot bowl. And then we'll get that going. So Elena rice. Now we need to go for a 3/4 cup of water. Because it called for 1.5 cups. So we're going to go 3/4. Okay, we're going to add it to our rice. Then I need to get my thyme so we can shred the thyme. So we're going for a 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, which I would say is, if we look at a 1/2 teaspoon, so you don't have to measure it if you don't want, but I'd say we're pretty close with the amount that you have. So I'm just going to shred it and put it right in. And so just go against the grain of the stem and it'll drop off your stem. Okay. So that's the thyme. We all need more thyme, right? Can never have enough thyme. Another one of those great herbs that is so wonderful to add to dishes. So thyme and a little more, trying to strip it all. Thyme will hold, fresh thyme will hold in the fridge for maybe a week or two. It depends on the moisture in it. If it's really moist, it will rot faster. It just gets moldy. So, you know, you'd be able to see it. It looks a little fuzzy. Don't use it. Turns brown. You don't want to go for that. Okay, a little bit more. And a bay leaf. Now you have a whole bay leaf. Oh, I actually have more time in here. You never have enough time. You got plenty. A bay leaf, you can do a whole or you can cut it in half. Technically, it would be a half, but I'll throw the whole thing in for more flavor. And we should have everything in there now. And then salt and pepper to taste. So I'm going to turn my heat on. We really just want it to simmer. So we don't want it boiling. We do want to bring it to a boil and then I'll bring it down. And then we want to simmer it. So we don't want it to to absorb the water going out of it too quickly. Okay, so we'll get that up to temperature, which it doesn't take long on gas. On your stovetops electric, it might take a little bit longer, but I already have a little bit of a boil and a simmer on the edges. So we're going to simmer for about 17 minutes. We can add some salt at this point. I think I would just add, you know, a shake of salt to whatever degree. So if you want to, getting hot over that pan. If you want to do, I don't know, 1/4 teaspoon. Pepper is always nice. Salt, again, hand amount, just to gauge. And you can, of course, salt it if you want at the end. All right. So we've got a nice looking simmer. I think I'm going to turn it down because I think that's going to get too hot. Remember, the trick with rice on the stovetop is not to overheat it and get it to dry out too quick. You want your moisture content to hold. So we'll cover it up. Let it sit for 17 minutes, and then we can move on to the final recipe, which is your tofu. All right, make sure I got everything out of the way. Tofu. Let's get my cutting board back in here. Now, you would have dried out or pressed out your tofu, and actually we could have taken some paper towels away earlier and then it would have been a little drier, but we have tofu now. And so you're going to use the whole block for this. And I usually will slice it down the middle. And then you can do your cubes across or your lines across. Here's the thing, the smaller you make it, it becomes a little bit more cumbersome to flip them. So I'll leave it up to you on how big you want it. I'm just going to turn my cutting board this way. Okay, so now you have pretty evenly cut squares and it dries out after you've pressed it. So we're using semi-firm, I think tonight was our tofu. but there's actually varying levels of firmness. And really, it just depends on what you're using it for. I mean, there are some that are really soft, and that is considered your soft tofu. It's a lot like yogurt texture, so it's pretty soft. Then you have medium that will hold up texture, nice for dishes, curries, and then firm and extra firm is even another option for you to use as far as what's going to hold up really well. Silken is you buy silken tofu, and that's even in like a thick soy mixture, not quite as block like this. It's this is bean curd. So soy is made by pressing soybeans, get the milk out, and then it's just like doing cheese. So when we make cheese, we add acids or salts or both to milk, and it turns into cheese. And so that's how they make tofu, is they use the soybean milk, add an acid or salts, usually magnesium chloride, and then they make it thick. And then they press it in cubes, pack it in water, and you take it home. So I'm gonna get my pan ready. So the tofu, we're going to do you got your tofu cut up, you have cornstarch, and we're gonna put that into a bowl, and we're gonna toss it before we cook it. So we're gonna have that ready to go. And then you also have a neutral flavored oil. Perfect, thanks. So you have neutral oil, and that's gonna be inside your saute pan. So use that whole content, okay? Check on this real quick. Ooh, that's getting a little hot. Turn that down a little bit. Okay, so then we have the neutral oil in there. Your sauce, how about this? It's already made for you. So it does have sake in there. It has mirin and it has soy sauce. So this is your teriyaki that you'll use after we cook our tofu. So we're gonna get this oil heated up. We wanna get it nice and hot. So we've cut up that, and then we do have green onions. So while that oil is heating up, which doesn't take long, I can wash my green onions. And I'm gonna get that ready. But basically that's my popper. And I think I'm gonna have to move my tofu anyway. So I'll wait till I get my tofu in. So we'll put our cornstarch in a bowl. Okay. And once that's in the bowl and the oil is hot, helps if you turn on the burner. How do you know your oil is hot enough? What are some tricks to knowing how hot your burner is or how hot your oil is? So we're gonna toss the tofu in the cornstarch. And yes, it kind of will get clumpy on there. But how do I know when my oil is hot enough? What are some tricks to knowing how hot the oil is? So we're going to toss this, kind of toss it around, right? Get it coated. You can use a spoon if you need to. I mean, some of these are breaking down a little bit. We're going to try and toss them.
One person said to poke a chopstick in the oil.
Yeah.
It sizzles.
Yep. How else could we check it? There we go. Okay, so coat your tofu pretty good with your cornstarch. How else could we check it? I don't know if you can pick up the shimmer, but there is a shimmer on it. It's kind of shimmering towards that edge, or it's kind of moving. The other thing you can do is just splash a drop of water in there. So I think I have water. There's a drop here. As we have more than a drop of water went in there. So we definitely know this is hot. All right, so we're gonna dump get our tofu out, and we're gonna put it into the fry pan. We're going to shake off, you know, try not to have the extra cornstarch with it. I'm going to put it in here. So we're not trying to cook cornstarch, but we want to cook the tofu. If you didn't drain it or you didn't have a chance to drain it, it does say there is a microwave instructions where you could cover it with a paper towel and microwave it for 2 to 3 minutes. I personally have never done that, but you're welcome to try it instead of having to press it for a half hour. It's just a faster way to do it. Okay, so we'll flip it, kind of get those to brown. And because they're all these small cubes, it might take us a little bit of individual flipping. Unless you try and flip them, but you can definitely flip them with a pair of tongs if you need to. I'll check my rice, how's my time on my rice? Ten minutes. It looked like it was closer to done than 10 minutes, so I'll check. Yeah, I think I'm going to turn my heat off and let it just steam. It looks like it's pretty much done. So tofu, we're looking for that kind of a crispy edge. Some of those are not quite getting touched by heat, so I'll separate them out. And that's when you can singly do a single flip with them. So your teriyaki sauce is ready. So once you get to the desired consistency and that color, so you're kind of looking for a golden brown. I mean, you might have a little darker edges on some, but you're trying to get to that nice caramel color. And you can definitely tell it's getting that crunchiness because it's kind of developing a skin on there. So you've got a nice little bit of a roundness there, or brown. Some of these that don't get quite, we'll flip them individually. That's why the smaller your cubes, the more flipping you're doing. So it just depends on what you want to do and your size. Okay. And I'll let that cook a minute. While that's cooking, my rice is steaming. My poke is in the fridge, which we could, we're going to think about in a minute, but actually I think I'll do my onion. So I'll rinse off my cutting board. It had just the cornstarch and the onion and the garlic. So safe to rinse it. We'll get our scallion. I already cut or washed that. Get my knife again, and it again, make your scallions half so that you're not cutting as much. So we're going to cut up that whole scallion. Or actually you could, yeah, this is a whole one. So we're going to do this. And again, I'm going to go for that angled cut. Okay. Frozen tofu. Anybody ever cooked with frozen tofu before? I think some of you, if you've been in my classes, you've had laundry's done. If you've been in class with me, we did a frozen tofu mixture. So we made it into like a garlic tofu. And I don't know, flip the. So frozen is definitely different. And usually you start out with the firm. And what happens is those cellular structures and bonds start to break down. So it's actually called, the Chinese call it 1,000-layer tofu, because it starts to like break into little more granular or more sponge-like. It does get a little bit more rubbery. However, it makes a really nice opportunity. If you want to use a marinade, you can, again, squeeze it, let it drain out, cut it, cube it, and then you marinate it, and it'll actually pull in more because you actually have more surface area to pull in that marinade or whatever you're using. So that's another way of doing it. where did tofu begin? Does anybody know? According to internet sources, where did tofu start? Where did it come from? How did we get it? We haven't been all that excited about it here in the US until 1970. So 1971, it started picking up speed, but where does it start from before that? I don't know if anybody would have an idea. China is right, guessing China. Good job. Okay, so it was originated about the 10th century, so about 2,000 years ago. It was founded, or they discovered it, and they don't have like the true like definition of why they got it, but it would have been, if you think of what was available to the Chinese culture at that time, they had soybeans, they had the milk, and then the theory is that maybe salt water got involved splashed into a bowl of soy milk. Well, if you put a salt water, it's a salt, so salt will help coagulate and pull that soy milk into cubes or into a curdle, basically. And so they founded it that way. And then actually in Japan, that's where we got the name tofu. So Japan actually is where we got the name from. It's actually derived from the Chinese word doufu, which meant curdled bean. So we actually have two kind of sources of where it's from. Now, somebody famous introduced it to the US, but it didn't hit popularity until about the 70s. So we actually had somebody pretty famous, the name will sound familiar when I mention it, who actually brought it to the US. And that person was an inventor. And so he brought it into US, and the US got pretty excited about it. And that was Benjamin Franklin. So he actually was the one who brought it in 1770. And again, they used seawater to help with curdling it. And that is where they found out that they could make tofu. Let's see where we are. So we have our tofu, and this is getting really close to where I want to get it. I don't want to get too much darker. If you have some pieces that didn't quite get brown enough, you can keep them going. Again, you can keep turning it, but you do want to kind of get that crispy edge to it to make them it's kind of like fried potatoes, except it's fried tofu. And our Olena rice, I can stir that. You can actually take out the bay leaf if you want. Turn it over and get all that turmeric in there. And turmeric is actually a very well known, like medicinal. They've used it for many years. In fact, turmeric was used and brought to Hawaii by the Polynesians. And so it's a canoe crop, and it's in the ginger family. So it has rhizome, and you actually can use it for, I even saw things that you can treat earaches and you can treat digestion issues. So turmeric has really gained speed on health. And I'm going to turn off my sauce in there. So it's got it whenever I'm ready to add my sauce. So I'm going to kind of shake this up there. And we're going, can you all hear me still? Okay. So we've got our tofu ready. We're going to add the sauce to it. Okay. We'll stir it up. Oh, it smells absolutely wonderful. And again, that teriyaki is just pulling into that cornstarch skin. So it really is nice. And that's pretty much done. That is your teriyaki tofu. Now, if you want to get a little bit more of like a caramelized edge, you can cook it a little bit longer, but that's what you're shooting for. And it's, the sugars in that teriyaki are caramelizing beautifully on there. So that's done. Rice is done. And let's pull our poke back out, our beets. And actually, we're going to add a couple more things to our tofu in a second. But before we do that, let's get our beets out. They've cooled off pretty much little bit less than room temperature. So we are ready to add, just trying to think of what I can use for my stirring. Stir it one more time. And again, your texture should be pretty close to that. And we need to add to our poke. Flip back to my, we're going to use the cilantro, the ginger. Right, so we're going to add, if we wanted to add any type of salt, you can also add salt to this, but I'll add my ginger, and I will add the scallions and cilantro. Now I have done this, I've done beet poke one other way, and that was just roasting beets. So this is a boiled beet recipe, but there are ways that you can actually roast it as well. And you'll mix your oops. Mix them up. Still have that really pretty color. So actually, you looked at it and you didn't, if you weren't too familiar with beets, that looks like some dark ahi, right? And then I'll squeeze my lime. Remember, I'm going to squeeze that whole lime on it. And again, that's pretty much to taste. Okay. So we're going to get that whole lime in there. And stir it up a bit more. Smells wonderful. And there is your beet poke, and then your toasted sesames you can use on top, and also you have some seaweed flakes. So once you get ready to serve it, you can actually put it, if you're going to put it into another bowl, you probably want to use, if you put it into another bowl, do this step last. So you're going to do your seaweed flakes as well as your sesames. So I'll just sprinkle across. And again, you have all these, so it's up to you how much you want to put in there. Because that was 1 tablespoon, and then we'll sprinkle this across so you see it on top. Okay, so now you can kind of see that texture on there. All right. That one is done, and we have a final version of beet poke in a bowl. All right. And our Olena rice we have done. I think we have to do any more with our Olena rice. That one is ready. We took off the bay leaf, and so that one is done. And here is your final product on Olena rice. Okay. And then your tofu. So we're going to put the tofu into a bowl. Serving bowl. Oh, it's kind of gotten stuck onto the bottom. Nice caramelized color. And of course, when you're heating with oil, always be cautious with your temperature. So now you have that, and we are going to sprinkle the bonito on there, which is your bag of, you have bonito flakes. And we have ginger. So I don't know if this has a, oh, there is a cut edge. It says cut. So you can pull it apart there. So you can sprinkle this across it. And it, because those are, it's kind of, they're alive. Isn't that wild? They actually kind of shrink up. And reminds me of Shrinky Dinks. Anybody ever played with Shrinky Dinks in the oven? That's kind of what it looks like. Not really alive, but it's there. They're just kind of, the flakes are capturing that moisture and the heat and kind of waving in the wind. And then we also have your pickled ginger. So you can add pickled ginger on top. If you want to drain it, you can. Drain off a little bit of that water. Hey, these could have been pickled with beets. And pickled beets is a real popular dish. And then you have your green onions on top. And there you go. So you now have beet poke, you have Olena rice, and you have teriyaki tofu for dinner tonight. I hope that you have all enjoyed cooking with us. Was there any questions from anybody? That we have a few minutes left. I think I'm trying to find any more of my fun facts. Before, any questions? All right, so a couple more fun facts. Oh. Sure, absolutely. So instead of the pan fry, put it in your air fryer. You're still tossing it with the cornstarch. And timing wise, I don't have the best time to give you on the option, but you could definitely air fry it. Most definitely, instead of pan frying it. Another interesting fact about beets, 1975, Soviet cosmonauts handed the American astronauts a soup called borscht. If anybody's ever had borscht, it's beet soup. And they actually did a funny, and they put a vodka label on the tubes that looked like that was the borscht. So that's kind of another fun fact. But again, beets are one of those really nice options, raw, cooked, either way, and have fun with that. Turmeric, we learned a little bit about it. Actually, kind of some of the things that are special to us here in Hawaii. There's actually a song, Pua Olena, and it was recorded by the Lim family, and that's what made Olena, Pua Olena, famous for here. So they made that in 1992. It was released, so you can Google that, Pua Olena, and it was all about Olena. And it is a yellow color, great for dyeing things. You can grow it at home. It's a deciduous plant, so it does die off. The leaves die off at a period of time in the year, so don't panic. It's not dead. It will come back. It's just that it has fallen over and it's going through its kind of dormant phase, and then it'll pick back up again, and you can use the Olena. So you're actually pulling it and using the rhizome from the ground. Anything else? Any other questions? My favorite root crop. Wow, I have a lot. I think I really enjoy Okinawan sweet potatoes. I think they have got such versatility, and we can do so many things with them. And I personally love the purple color. And so that is like one of those out there that is really a great option to use. You can bake it, you can grill it, you can boil them, you can do anything with them. So I think that's probably one of the most versatile, plus any sweet potatoes. But really, I'm a foodie, so I will eat anything, and I try everything at least once. And if it's not great, then it's like, okay, I won't make it again, but I'm always game to try something once. So you throw it at me, I'll prepare it, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, yeah. My puppies are always, or my dog lover in me is always with me. So, all right. Have a wonderful weekend. It's 3 days. Wow. We get 3 days off of school at least. I don't know about that means that 3 days off of homework, but we will do 3 days of no school. So have a safe weekend. Stay healthy out there still. And again, enjoy all the foods that you've cooked for dinner. And if you're not cooking them, we have the YouTube channel that you can watch it back again if you need to. And join us next month for Japanese traditional cooking. And we will see you next month. Bye, everybody.